Okay. All right. Hi, my name is Eduardo Abarca. This is
Andy Libson.
and we are here today going to be doing a YouTube video, hopefully a YouTube series where we'll be following up on different topics, discussing the various issues that are affecting us today, that are affecting you today, especially here in the USA.
And what are we calling our YouTube channel?
We're calling it What Is?
What's Left?
Yes, what is left?
What apostrophe S left?
What apostrophe
Question mark.
S? Question mark. Okay, sorry. ESL speakers, you understand. What is left? What's left?
Yeah.
We'll be doing a video series called What's Left for all of you that are interested in the various topics that are happening, not just during this time, during this important period of this current administration here in the USA, but rather a continuous conversation that we need to have, ongoing, that affects us socially, politically, culturally, and in society in general, globally, internationally. And this is why we are here today. We both have different backgrounds. We both have different points of view. And we're going to be discussing this from our stands, our positions, right?
And also another part that was important to both of us is me and Eduardo spent a lot of time talking about politics, about the world, about our beliefs. We do see that we agree on many things. We have seen we've disagreed on things. We've changed our minds about things.
Yes.
In relationship to that discussion. And we feel like one of the things we hope that this video series would promote is for people who are looking to change the world. You don't have to be experts. You just have to be willing to be engaged in a discussion. And one of the problems with the left right now is an unwillingness to actually hear other points of view, even other points of view that might sound racist or sound sexist. We're going to have to engage in those ideas because those ideas exist among our fellow workers, and we're going to have to be able to talk with each other if we're going to actually unite. So one of the things I hope is that our conversations hopefully act as a model for the other kinds of conversations that could have people can have out there. Because we're going to disagree and we're going to get upset sometimes, but it hasn't broken our friendship or association. It's actually built our friendship. So we hope that kind of thing can happen elsewhere.
Yes. And I want to, more than myself, about myself, I want you to sort of give a little bit of background of who you are as a person, an individual, and politically. I'm a progressive on the left political spectrum, but we have differences because you have a very strong political stance that I want you to sort of speak for yourself and why that is important, because I'll be asking you questions as well. We both have sort of a common intention with this video, but we also have our like sub intention, right? I'm more of like coming, and I'll speak, you'll see your intention in a bit. I'm coming more from educating the public intention and having difficult conversations and asking questions so that we're able to then dissect a topic and discuss why this is critical or why there are disagreements regarding the topic. That could be gun control, that could be women's rights or issues, racism, identity politics, right? So why don't I give you a chance to sort of give some background, a little bit of information about yourself.
Are you going to do the same?
I will do some, yeah. I think the reason why, if that's all right, and that I'm more so focusing on a little spotlight on you is because I want you to state your intention, because I just said my intention. My intention is to educate, really. And I'm going to have some neutral ground or some indecisive ground. This is where and whereas you kind of have,
I have no indecisiveness. I know everything about everything.
But you have the lines marked.
Okay.
You have the lines marked different than I do.
Yes, that's true.
I have leanings. Yeah. And you clearly have it drawn out for yourself where you stand.
On some things.
That's right. And it's etched. Yeah. And whereas I think this is why I'm relatable, because I'm not completely um, a hardcore etched what do you call it?
Pain in the ass.
Yes. And so you are like right now you know exiled from even politically from some of your own
I've left two socialist groups. I left one. I was kicked out of another.
So anyhow, why don't you explain from there? Why don't you
All
give
right.
some background?
So I'm a school teacher here in San Francisco. I've been teaching for 18 years. I teach science. I began teaching chemistry, and now I'm teaching mostly physics. um, I had a background in research, but I got out of that a long time ago, 18 years ago. Um, During that time, I was active in my union, active as what is like a building rep, still like a shop steward, which is an elected representative at your school for representing workers there. And I've also been on the executive board of my union, United Educators of San Francisco. Um, and I'm leaving that position. I don't think it's doing anything. I've been part of a reform caucus, Educators for Democratic Union. We did some good work. We rose. We crescendo. We took power. We got our president into office, and then we did everything wrong and collapsed and basically became the same things that we were trying to fight. But I think what Eduardo was talking about in terms of those hardline beliefs is I'm a socialist. Could describe myself as a Marxist, and I guess I will say I'm not of the socialist of the brand of, say, Bernie Sanders that maybe most people are familiar with. I do believe in fighting for a better world, but I'm a revolutionary socialist. I believe in a term that many socialists are not comfortable with, dictatorship or the proletariat, that workers are going to collectively have to impose our will on the capitalist class through a revolution. That there'll be elements of it that won't be violent, but it will definitely require violence. It will require armed workers, things like that. And it will obviously require organization and a different set of ideas for workers to have than they currently do. It will require a fight against racism, a fight against sexism internally within the class, but also to fight those ideas that are being often used to divide us externally from the capitalists. I guess my biggest thing is I do believe most socialists will say they agree with that, but I actually believe we've pretty much given up on that goal because we think it's not going to happen. I understand that because if you ask me to make a bet, there's this whole notion or idea within Marxism. Engels was quoted of either either we're going to have a socialist revolution that's going to change capitalism to something that can actually work, which is working class democracy, internationally, like global international working class democracy, which I guess is a long way of saying socialist revolution, or we're going to have barbarism. So it's going to be socialism or barbarism. And if you ask me to make a bet right now, I would put my money on barbarism. I think that the prospects for that revolution and having it, which we need to have it. If we don't have it, we are going to destroy ourselves through a war, through environmental destruction, more likely through a war, which is a version of environmental destruction.
Like you mean a third world war?
Yeah, there will be a third world war, and unless we avert it through revolution, so I think the left has given up on that prospect. And people will say they don't. Oh, we haven't. You have, or you left the group. You left. Da 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 da. No, we've given up on it. And my aim is to try to basically speak clearly about the fact that we should not be apologetic about wanting a revolution, and being willing to fight for that and say it openly and often. I'll start there.
And your intention? What do you think is your intention here in this video?
To say that clearly here and see if other people agree, but also if there is an audience, see if there's going to be an interaction of ideas. We'll continue our interaction of ideas, but also see if there's people who have something out there to say that might make me think and be like, well, I thought this about this, but now I think this about this. Or other people who are like, yeah, I agree with you. We should talk, and eventually start a broader network of communicating about how we're going to change the world.
As for me, I would categorize myself to be more on the left, of course, but to be a progressive, possibly even more of the model that Europe has, Democrat socialists, with some anarchist socialist leanings. Not that I cannot fully say that I am, but I have read lots of.
You cannot say you are fully a
anarchist
or socialist.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So anyhow, that's my stand, and I do not think I'm not like a liberal. Most people will label me a mainstream liberal. I'm not like that. I do have some criticisms on the left that from where you stand, and I do have lots of criticisms on the right, and I have lots of criticisms for center leftists as well. So I will be delving into that by asking questions for us to examine those.
So things like that. So I have argued that not only as teachers that we could strike, but we should strike, and that we should see that strike not just as, in my mind, as say fighting for a better contract, which it is, but the most important part of it is the possibility of that strike leading to a larger battle in our city and potentially in our state. That strike could become a statewide teacher strike, and a statewide teacher strike could become a general strike or mass strike in San Francisco or California, and a mass strike in California could become a nationwide strike. That is the process that we are going to have to go through to have a revolution, to have a revolution be even on the table. And unfortunately, workers right now see strike as their enemy because we lose wages, we do this. It's upheaval. Absolutely, it's upheaval, but it's upheaval on our terms, and that's where we get to dictatorship of the proletariat. Can we dictate our terms to our enemies? And our enemies are the capitalists. That is, they're our class enemies. They're not worse people than us. They just happen to be part of a class that is opposed to our collective interests.
I'm interested in influencing, but I also want to target a larger audience. So again, I will state my intention. It is mostly to educate, and from there everyone can make a decision. I think when people have lots of facts or lots of, it's hard to say facts these days. It used to be easier. When you have a variety of opinions or a variety of, when I think about journalism, for example, sometimes you can take positions, but sometimes you're just there to ask the hard questions. Why? Because people have questions. People want to know. And I'm more interested in being that intermediate. Yes, I'm interested in being that intermediate person between. You have clearly marked positions. I have some that are very clearly marked. Others, I will say that I don't know where I stand yet. I don't know where I stand, and we talked about this last 2 weeks ago when we talked about Syria. I don't know a lot of the things about Syria. It's in here. We are here to be sharing, being authentic about where we stand. Sometimes we don't know the answer. Sometimes I personally don't know what to say in a certain situation. We talked about Syria 2 weeks ago, and the chemical weapons attack, right? Whether it was Syria, whether it was some other rebel group, or was it the government, or was it a distraction, whatever it was, we have disagreements about that. Now, my disagreement mostly comes from being like, we need to call something a war crime, and you're saying that's a distraction. We need to focus here. Correction, you can always correct. We need to focus here and really dismantle the chemical weapons attacks that we do here, the USA has here, right? And I'm only saying, like, I don't have all the answers, and I want people to be able to hear a voice, hear someone else's voice. I might potentially bring up something else that someone else had. Like I listen to a lot of other podcasters. Um, they have very interesting points, and I might mention that point here. Not to say that that is my position, but it may be counter to your position that I do not stand for, but it is something to sort of challenge you. And that is what I'm trying to communicate, that it's not so much that I'm not interested. Yes, anything that we talk about here will have an influence to some degree. But what I'm trying to say is I want to be a vehicle for the information.
Right.
That is my intention.
Right, and possibly for the discussion as well.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think when there we have a lot. Yeah, it's clear to me, and it might be clear to them. We'll see. Who pays attention to this anyway? But I feel the same way. For me, so I watch a lot of YouTube videos. Don't listen to as many podcasts. I'm not as familiar with that. I read the news, watch the news, at least on YouTube or the internet, and it's interesting. People are very passionate and willing to express their opinions about what they think about video games, or what they think about movies, or what they think about art of some sort, music videos, and people have whole YouTube video channels from showing their responses to those things and thoughts about those things. And my goal would be to have people have that same willingness to put their ideas in front of people about their political views. I don't think you pretend to say that you know everything. I don't pretend. I do say that I feel more sure about some things, but all that means is it's just going to be harder to knock me off the mountain, and get me to say, "Oh, I was wrong." It just means you got to put up more facts, more evidence, and then eventually you can. Like I don't know everything. I don't know everything about anything. I know some things about some things, and but I do believe ultimately all workers are going to have to take a stand. And to take a stand, you have to say, I believe this, and that's the starting point for I will fight for this. And if you don't believe in anything, that's John Cougar Mellencamp had a song which he's quoting somebody else. If you don't believe in anything, you'll fall for everything, or something like that. That's a misquote. But anyway, you get the idea. So I really think it's important for people to say, this is what I believe. This is what I believe because of this. And then somebody else will say, well, this is what I don't agree with you, and here's why. That's the discussion. But ultimately, the most important thing is I would want to find myself being able to say, okay, what is it I really believe? What is it that I'm willing to express to others, to express to you? And this is partly why I wanted to do this channel, What's Left. And what I would want is other people in the world to be thinking, what do I think, and what am I willing to say? And I would like people to have less fear about that. And I think the left needs to create a situation, because we have actually created a situation where people are terrified to say what they think. Terrified to say what they think. Not as much about, say, U.S. imperialism, although I've met more people who will say, you know what, the problem isn't ISIS, the problem is the United States. Not many people argue with me, and yet we spend all this time talking about ISIS. The biggest, the most violent beast in this planet ain't ISIS, it's the United States. But people are terrified to talk about racism and their thoughts about race, about sexism and their thoughts about gender and sex, and that we cannot have that situation and move forward on these ideas. So that's what I hope.
We had a discussion some time ago about how the left really is screwing themselves when the right allows for more freedom of exchange of thought.
I do, yeah.
Can you speak about that? Because I agree with you about that. I think on the left we're very careful about what we say and how we communicate ideas, and we restrict ourselves, and ultimately that really hurts us as as the people that stand for very similar positions on the left. Can you speak about that?
I think the right affords itself more latitude to speak about its thoughts around a range of ideas. I think the right tends to be more principled, like their situation on gun control. They don't give up on it. They're like they're against it, and they have a reason for it. And there's a reason. There's a part of that reason that I actually agree with. The part of the reason that says the state wants to take my guns away and use that as a way of ultimately controlling me, and that is entirely true. And the left knows that that's true because the left knows workers need to be armed to take down the government. They just don't want to say it. So yet they're willing to give that up. And the other thing the left knows is that that any laws that the state puts on the books around gun control, they're not going to be used against me. They're going to be used against you. Brown people, black people, those are the people who are going to face the music on gun laws. And those are the people who often feel they need to be armed because they can't and don't and shouldn't trust the police, but they have to protect themselves. And ironically, the police are going to come in and use those gun laws to put them in jail. So anyway, we're getting on another issue.
Yeah, because we were talking about the exchange of thought.
Correct, and I distracted from that. So I just think the left needs to find itself. I need to reprinciple itself, I believe, and to state its principles clearly, and also to create an environment where there can be an open discussion of this. I do think it's important to be thoughtful about how you speak with people, but careful. I don't think that helps us too much. We're across racial lines, across national lines. We're going to have to learn how to say some blunt things to one another, and sometimes we're going to have to hear, you know what, I don't agree with that, and when you say it, here's what comes up for me, and we'll figure that out. But frankly, I think we are way too censored on ourselves, and this notion that every person who says a right-wing thing is a fascist, we have used as a tool to basically make it so that we don't even know the other side's argument, so we can't handle it. They usually destroy us in debates, and that's not right. We have a better set of ideas, but we're not used to discussing our ideas, so we are not capable of actually challenging our political opponents for the hearts and minds of the working class because we don't allow the debate to take place.
Whereas on the right, people have those debates.
That is my impression.
They have these discussions, and you see that they do not.
And we're not talking Republicans and Democrats here.
No.
We're talking about people that people would call alt-right. Sometimes, whatever. We're talking about a set of right intellectuals and workers who are listening to them and talking about this stuff.
Yeah, I read somewhere that leaders on the political right had something during the Obama administration years. They decided that they would not divide themselves, that they would then unite, and no matter what disagreements and what positions, that they would try to do their best to stay united, to be able to have or to regain control over the White House. And that meant for them to not isolate themselves. And that is an example of how I think when we talk about this, that the right allows for deviant discussions or debatable discussions to have within their party group, or to have racist ideas, or to have very just out of the norm ideas about the press, about speech, about race, about class, about gender issues, that they're able to then have these discussions and not isolate themselves, and to have the freedom of exchange of thought, and still be united. In contrast, if you speak your mind on the left, people are more not willing to associate themselves with people who have kind of outlier thoughts, right? That is what I'm trying to communicate. That's a contrast from on the left and the right. You have to be very careful what you say. I personally do believe there are sensitive issues in which you have to be careful. We have different positions on this. I do think that there are sensitive issues, especially, let's say, when you talk about race. There's a long history to it. There's lots of feelings around it. It's a very emotional conversation, and I think that I'm very careful when I talk about it, so that I can try to be heard or intermediate, right, between different differences of opinions. Um, However, unlike other people, especially people of color, I do not shut down um, some political discussion that white people have about race because they're so afraid to have this discussion with other people of color because they'll be afraid to be labeled a racist, for example. And I'm able to hear them. Um, I want to contribute to the already overwhelming amount of voices on political thought there is on YouTube, the internet, in radio and podcasts, and the media in general. I'm interested in that, and you are as well. We're interested in contributing to the political discussion. We hope that this discussion will ignite others to organize, others to contact. I will speak for myself here. I hope that this political discussion will ignite others to organize, to go out there and vote. For myself, I'm someone who does still have some confidence in the political system that in place. Not completely 100%, but I do think that on a local level, there are so many things that we can do to influence the way that we handle governance around money, for example, and healthcare. Currently, there is a San Francisco mayoral race, and there are some positions there that we can have some control at a local level. I do believe that. And I hope that we can be able to have this discussion that may be needed for folks that feel they cannot have a conversation with their friends because it may be too sensitive of a topic, and this will be able to have them feel connected with others if they may have some views that may not be able to articulate correctly, and for others that may come off as a certain way, like you are all of a sudden labeled because you're thinking this way. But having these discussions will be able to hopefully help you and support you to articulate your political thoughts on a position that you're interested in delving into more.
So one of the ways we were thinking of ending our videos is to talk about what we would discuss next week.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had any time to think about what you would want to discuss next week?
Yes.
Okay. You want to put yours out there first?
Well, I think one thing that we both potentially are interested in is the teacher strikes.
Okay.
Arizona has right now started theirs, and I think it's interesting because for me, when you think of the unions and you think of teacher strikes, you think of blue states, so-called blue states here in the USA, but these are happening. This is something that affects everyone, and I think when people are affected directly, it really matters to people. And I think this is an issue that I think most people would be interested in because this is around families, education, workers' rights, and our system around education in general.
Okay. So. And the thing that comes up for me is talking about either the Iran deal. I shouldn't say two though, should I? But I would say the Iran deal. Like what's going on there? Again, Eduardo, we don't have to be experts. I've done a little reading about it, not a lot, but what do we make of it? And we can try to get some facts out there, like what we've heard, because the problem is we always know, like mainstream media lies or distorts, and so as best we can, go through that. So that's what comes up for me right now.
Yeah.
And we'll think about it, and we'll either do that, or mine, or something else.
We'll see as well. I think over time as well, the week with so many changes that are happening in history as we're making it, I think it will determine for us as well. If not, then we will come to a compromise. Yeah. I think, as well as the teacher strike thing is going on.
It's kind of over.
Well,
Arizona is over.
It's over.
I think they reached an agreement. but
Did
I'm not
they?
sure. I'm pretty sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
you see, this is why we need to do weekly videos because I need to.
And I gotta check if that's true, but that's what I thought. That's why I was like,
Oh.
oh, okay. But let's
But I also
look
want to
into
talk
it.
about that wave.
Oh yeah, it's true.
You understand?
Yeah,
Because
got it.
even though it may have reached an agreement, I will say in this video, it started,
Ah, yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
in the South, you know,
Right.
oh, in the red states.
Yeah.
And then you see this wave
right.
happening and how even potentially here in San Francisco we can have
Yeah.
potential teacher strikes
I think-
and to be
yes.
empowered by that.
All right.
And we can discuss that. Not maybe this next
I've
video.
been defeated already in my first video. This guy defeated me already. We're probably going to talk about teacher strikes.
No. If it is something very, it is something very fresh. If it's something that we can discuss on another video because it is over, once we will fact check that.
Yeah. Don't believe
then,
us.
Then we can then discuss that for us another post video. I think the Iran deal is pretty fresh though.
Okay, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
Okay, stay tuned. So we will discuss with you all.
Bye bye.
Ciao.